Paul Krugman of the New York Times sat down with Bloomberg TV, and he spoke about what he thinks motivates Trump voters.
He obviously has his background, but he also is trying to target a sort of American that feels like they're out of economic luck, and they're looking to him to sort of bring them up. How much of that sort of economic malaise that is still sort of out there in the U.S. is contributing to his following and to his support base?
I mean, if you actually look at, now I'm just retailing what I hear from other people. I mean, I talk to political scientists. I take them very seriously, and they say that, economic anxiety is not a very good predictor of who's a Trump supporter. Basically, racial antagonism is a good predictor of who's a Trump supporter. Now, there may be some interaction effect. Maybe if the country were really booming and wages were rising and manufacturing was still strong, all of that racial anxiety would be somewhat on hold, although I'm not even sure about that if you look at the history of this stuff. But the idea that this is what it's about, that his China bashing, his trade stuff, is really behind the movement. I think all that's happening is that all of these subterranean impulses that have been driving a lot of the Republican vote for decades are now just coming to the surface.
I think it's both things. So his argument is, well, it's more of the fact that they're just bigots, they're just xenophobes, they're just racists. They have this fear of the United States of America becoming less and less white, and the statistics bear out that aspect of it, that indeed that is happening, and the number of minorities in the U.S., it's growing, and the number of white people, or the percentage of white people over time, it's going down, down, down. And what he's saying is, if anything, the lion's share of the blame goes to just their attitudes and their ideology, and he thinks economics is secondary. The reality is, I think that there is an interaction going on there. So are there going to be bigots and xenophobes and racists to a certain extent, no matter what you do, even if everybody had a great life? There are people who are poisoned either by a religious ideology or just by basic tribalism, where they're going to be racists and xenophobes and bigots no matter what. Yes. But do you make it much less likely that those impulses become predominant and powerful and an important election factor if everybody's doing well and if everybody has a good middle-class life? The answer to that is also definitely yes. So both things are true, but what I fear is the way that Paul Krugman is talking about this, he's being far too dismissive. And he's basically downplaying the economic angle and playing up the race angle. And I think he's doing that because he's trying to absolve the neoliberal elites of their part in destroying the middle class of this country and creating a monster like Trump. I've maintained from the beginning, you simply cannot have a successful Donald Trump presidency, or campaign, I should say, if it wasn't for the fact that the entire establishment has been so immensely disconnected from the people for so long. I mean, remember, guys, the establishment across the board, they agree, more so-called free trade deals, which are just outsourcing deals. They across the board agree, unions should have less power, and we should either regulate a little bit or regulate not at all. So things that used to have a wider spectrum of agreement and disagreement, where Democrats would say, we're simply pro-union, we think we should do more regulation, we don't think we should outsource deals. If you had a vibrant and thriving Democratic Party and the Democrats were actual liberals and progressives and not neoliberals, and the Democratic Party didn't, for example, repeal Glass-Steagall and, didn't, for example, sign NAFTA. If you had the Democrats fighting for the people, yes, I don't think that this backlash and this pro-Trump vote and movement would be as strong as it is, because it's a lot harder to hate the other when your bills are paid for and you're rather comfortable. Now, again, as I said earlier on, it is true that sometimes, yes, you're still going to have people who are bigots and racists no matter what, even if everybody has a middle-class lifestyle. But there would be fewer of them, and it wouldn't be as big of a driving force. Because when people are down on their luck, they feel the need to scapegoat. And they want to blame the Muslims, and they want to blame the Mexicans, and they want to blame the black people. And Donald Trump is tapping into that, and he's mixing in a healthy dose of economic populism. So if you take away either one of the prongs of Donald Trump, he wouldn't be as successful. If you take away the xenophobia and the bigotry, he wouldn't be as successful. in the Republican primary. If you take away the economic populism, he wouldn't be as successful. So both parts of this matter, but I think Paul Krugman, he's trying to downplay the economic angle, because if you downplay the economic angle, what do you get to say? All these fucking Trump voters, they're just crazy people, they're just stupid people, they're just bigots, they have no legitimate concerns, and that's more of what's driving them. Well, if you acknowledge that, well, it's at least partially also an economic issue, that they really have been fucked over by globalization and left behind. If you acknowledge that, well, then it's also the Democratic Party and the neoliberals who have a lot to answer for. Because, again, they're part of the establishment, and they've been driving us in the direction of screwing over the middle class more and more, along with the Republicans, and they're not actual liberals and progressives who believe in a New Deal type system, who believe in social democracy, and who actually fight for these people. You know, again, it's much harder to hate the other when you're comfortable and make a decent living. But in part because of economics, and yes, in part because of hateful ideology spread by talk radio and spread by Fox News, both of those things together, you mix them together, and you get Trumpenstein. And that's where we're at right now.